In a nation forged by revolution and bound by ideals, betrayal has always carried a bitter weight. From the earliest days of independence to the modern digital age, some acts have struck deeper than any enemy bullet because they came from within. These betrayals weren't just political scandals or secret deals. They were cracks in the foundation of trust. Acts committed not by foreign powers, but by fellow citizens, leaders, and heroes, people once believed to be loyal to the American dream. This is a journey through 8 moments when the unthinkable happened, when loyalty turned to treachery, and the consequences shaped history. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. He had everything a hero needed: courage, intelligence, and a rising military reputation. Benedict Arnold was once the pride of the Continental Army during the American Revolution. He fought bravely in key battles, risking his life for the dream of independence. But beneath the uniform, resentment brewed. Arnold felt overlooked and underappreciated by Congress. His ambition began to sour, and pride turned into bitterness. In 1780, Arnold made a deal that would redefine treason in America. He conspired with the British to hand over West Point, a crucial American fort, in exchange for money and a position in the British Army. His plan came dangerously close to success until the British courier carrying the secret documents was captured. Arnold's treachery was exposed, but he managed to escape before he could be arrested. The betrayal sent shockwaves through the colonies. A man once hailed as a patriot was now the face of treason. His name became so infamous that it still lingers centuries later as a symbol of ultimate disloyalty. He died in exile, disgraced, never able to return to the country he tried to sell out. Benedict Arnold's betrayal wasn't just military, it was moral, cutting to the heart of a young nation still fighting for its identity. He was once the Vice President of the United States, a Revolutionary War veteran, and a political force with ambitions that reached far beyond Washington. Aaron Burr lived in the shadow of larger-than-life figures like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, but he had no intention of remaining a footnote in their stories. Driven by ego and a thirst for power, Burr's ambition would ultimately steer him toward one of the most shadowy episodes in early American history. After his infamous duel in 1804, where he fatally shot Alexander Hamilton, Burr's political career began to unravel. But instead of fading quietly, he set his sights on something far bolder: building his own empire. Burr embarked on a mysterious expedition into the western frontier. Rumors swirled that he intended to create an independent nation from parts of the American Southwest and possibly seize Spanish-held territories. The government took notice. President Jefferson ordered his arrest, accusing him of treason. Burr was put on trial in 1807 in a case that captivated the nation. The evidence was circumstantial, the testimony murky, and Burr was ultimately acquitted. But the damage had been done. His reputation lay in ruins, and the whispers of conspiracy never faded. Aaron Burr's betrayal wasn't a single dramatic moment, it was a slow erosion of loyalty, a dangerous flirtation with insurrection masked as ambition. He slipped through the legal cracks, but his actions left a deep scar. In a young republic still finding its footing, Burr reminded the country how easily the pursuit of personal power could become a betrayal of everything the nation stood for. In the thick tension of the Cold War, paranoia and patriotism clashed in a storm of suspicion. At the center of one of the most controversial espionage cases in American history stood Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, an unassuming couple from New York City, accused of delivering nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. To some, they were traitors, to others, scapegoats. But one truth was undeniable. Their story changed how Americans viewed betrayal from within. Julius, an engineer, and Ethel, a secretary, were accused of passing classified information about the U.S. atomic bomb program to the Soviets during and after World War II. The government claimed their actions helped accelerate the Soviet Union's development of nuclear weapons, intensifying the arms race and global fear of annihilation. Arrested in 1950, the Rosenbergs pleaded not guilty, maintaining their innocence even as the trial captured national headlines. Evidence against them was controversial, and much of it depended on the testimony of Ethel's brother, who had his own reasons to cooperate. The trial was swift, the jury unsympathetic, and the outcome predetermined by a nation desperate to make an example. In 1953, the Rosenbergs were executed in the electric chair, becoming the only American civilians put to death for espionage during the Cold War. Their betrayal, or the perception of it, sent a chilling message. It wasn't just soldiers or politicians who could turn. It could be neighbors, families, ordinary people with extraordinary consequences. Decades later, the case remains divisive. Declassified documents suggest Julius was indeed involved in espionage, but Ethel's role may have been overstated. Still, their names endure in the American psyche, a grim reminder of a time when fear turned citizens against each other, and when trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired. By the late 1960s, America was mired in a war that seemed to have no end. The Vietnam conflict had already cost thousands of lives, divided the nation, and shaken its faith in leadership. But few knew the depth of deception until one man decided the truth could no longer be buried. Daniel Ellsberg, a former military analyst, had access to a top-secret government report, one that detailed years of lies about the war. What he did next would make him a hero to some and a traitor to others. The Pentagon Papers revealed a stark reality. Multiple U.S. administrations had misled Congress and the public about America's involvement in Vietnam. Promises of progress were often lies. Commitments to peace were shadowed by plans for escalation. The report showed that the war had been prolonged not to win, but to avoid political embarrassment. Ellsberg, haunted by the weight of this knowledge, decided to leak the documents to the press. In 1971, the New York Times began publishing excerpts. The Nixon administration immediately tried to stop them, sparking a landmark First Amendment battle. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, which ruled in favor of the newspapers. The truth was out. To the government, Ellsberg was a betrayer of national secrets. To others, he was a whistleblower, willing to risk everything for the truth. His leak didn't end the war, but it destroyed the last fragments of blind trust Americans had in their leaders. The Pentagon Papers exposed a betrayal not just of policy, but of principle. A betrayal that revealed how fragile democracy becomes when truth is treated as a disposable asset. It started as a break-in, clumsy, almost forgettable. 5 men were caught inside the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate complex in 1972. At first, it seemed like a simple case of political espionage. But as journalists dug deeper and investigations widened, it became clear. This wasn't a rogue operation. It was a cover-up orchestrated from the highest office in the land. President Richard Nixon, a man elected to restore order and confidence, had become entangled in a web of surveillance, secrecy, and sabotage. Tapes recorded in the Oval Office revealed a stunning reality. Nixon had tried to obstruct justice, lied to the American public, and used the machinery of government to protect his own power. The betrayal wasn't just legal, it was deeply personal to millions who believed in the sanctity of the presidency. As Congress moved toward impeachment, Nixon's defenses crumbled. Members of his own party abandoned him. In August 1974, facing near certain removal, Nixon resigned in disgrace, the first and only U.S. president to do so. The nation watched as Marine One lifted off from the White House lawn, carrying with it the shattered image of invincibility. Watergate wasn't just a political scandal, it was a moral collapse at the core of American leadership. It revealed how power, when unchecked, can consume principle, how a presidency can be weaponized not in service of the people, but in self-preservation. The aftermath gave rise to reforms and a new skepticism toward government, but the wound never fully healed. Watergate wasn't just the fall of a man, it was the betrayal of a nation's trust, played out under the harsh glare of history. In the 1980s, America stood firm in its public stance. No arms deals with terrorists, no support for regimes that violated human rights, and no tolerance for hidden wars. But behind the closed doors of the Reagan administration, a covert operation was unfolding, one that would defy Congress, subvert democracy, and betray the very values the nation claimed to uphold. The plan was as tangled as it was illegal. Senior U.S. officials sold weapons to Iran, a sworn enemy under embargo, in hopes of securing the release of American hostages in Lebanon. But that was only the beginning. The money from those arms sales was secretly funneled to the Contras, a rebel group fighting the socialist government in Nicaragua. The problem? Congress had explicitly banned U.S. support for the Contras through the Boland Amendment. The scheme was exposed in 1986, and the fallout was immediate. Hearings were televised. Officials resigned. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North became a household name, defending the operation as an act of patriotism. But many Americans saw it differently. This wasn't patriotism, it was deception. The government had broken its own laws, manipulated the public, and waged a shadow war far from the eyes of democracy. Though some convictions followed, most were overturned or pardoned. No one truly paid the price. The betrayal lingered, not in the headlines, but in the erosion of trust. Iran-Contra reminded the nation that even in times of peace, the machinery of betrayal could still turn behind the scenes. It proved that American power, when left unchecked, could be turned inward, not just against enemies abroad, but against the very principles it was meant to defend. In the age of smartphones, satellites, and social media, privacy has become a fragile illusion. Yet most Americans believe their government, bound by law and the Constitution, respected the boundaries between security and surveillance. That belief was shattered in 2013, when a 29-year-old former NSA contractor named Edward Snowden leaked thousands of classified documents to journalists. What those files revealed would ignite a global firestorm and redefine betrayal in the digital age. The documents proved that the U.S. government was conducting massive, covert surveillance programs, collecting phone records, emails, and internet activity, not just from foreign targets, but from millions of ordinary Americans. The National Security Agency, empowered by secret court rulings, had created a system that watched its own people with a scope never before imagined. To some, Snowden was a whistleblower, a man of conscience who exposed a dangerous overreach. To others, he was a traitor who compromised national security and aided America's enemies. He fled the country, first to Hong Kong, then to Russia, where he remains in exile. The federal government charged him under the Espionage Act, with no possibility of a fair trial that would allow him to argue his motivations. The betrayal wasn't just Snowden's, depending on one's perspective. It was also the government's. A betrayal of transparency, of privacy, and of trust. The scandal forced reforms, stirred public debate, and changed how tech companies and citizens viewed data and freedom. But the wound remains open. Snowden's actions cast a long shadow over the meaning of loyalty in the 21st century, where a keyboard, not a weapon, can become the tool of treason or the voice of a patriot. It was supposed to be a ceremonial day, a constitutional formality. On January 6, 2021, Congress gathered to certify the results of a democratic election, an act that had for centuries symbolized the peaceful transfer of power. But what unfolded instead was one of the most shocking betrayals in American history. Not from foreign invaders or distant enemies, but from fellow citizens, some waving flags, some dressed in tactical gear, all fueled by lies and disinformation. The United States Capitol, a symbol of democracy recognized around the world, was stormed by a violent mob. Doors were smashed, windows shattered, lawmakers fled for their lives, and security forces were overwhelmed. The chaos was not spontaneous. It had been building for weeks. The crowd had been stirred by baseless claims of a stolen election, amplified by powerful voices who refused to accept defeat. For hours, the heart of American government was under siege. Offices were looted. Death and injury followed. It wasn't just a riot. It was an attack on the nation's most sacred process. The betrayal came not just from those who broke through the barricades, but from those in power who enabled the narrative that led them there. The institutions held, but the illusion of unbreakable unity was gone. January 6th wasn't just a violent day. It was a historic fracture, a moment when allegiance to democracy was tested and, in some corners, abandoned. It marked the point where partisanship became insurgency and where lies proved more dangerous than any weapon. The betrayal wasn't only of buildings or procedures. It was of trust, of truth, and of the fragile agreement that binds a republic together. Betrayal in American history isn't rare, it's revealing. It tells us not only who broke the rules, but why the rules matter. Each act in this chronicle cut deep because it violated something sacred, belief in a shared purpose, a higher principle, or a trusted institution. Whether it came from generals, presidents, or private citizens, betrayal has a way of writing itself into the nation's memory with ink that never fades. And as history has shown, the real threat isn't always outside the gates. It often walks among us, cloaked in loyalty, until the moment of truth arrives. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.